Well, Bill English has indicated that a social investment approach will be driving his first budget as Prime Minister. The former Finance Minister says the government wants to focus its spending on where it makes the most difference, especially supporting children most at risk of long-term disadvantage. Well, Bill English is in the studio with me in Wellington. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
Social investment, why? What's the great advantage?
Just getting a very deeper understanding of which people where are going to benefit from the spending, and also along with that being able to show that an impact has been made. So in the case of the announcements last week, instead of widespread a small amount of money right across the early childhood sector or early primary school, we focused on particular groups of children. And I think that's part of the key to it, is understanding that this is money for the children and the need they have. In some cases, a few thousand kids who go to school, start school, can't speak properly, rather than just putting money into the top of the education system.
So the targeting of this money, that is as a result of information that you've got from data. Are you putting too much faith in the data?
No, I don't think so. It can only tell you where to look, but it can tell you where you are going to get some real benefits in changing lives. But the business of actually doing it, of course, needs the dedicated frontline staff, to use the sort of funding delivery system that we have. Is
there a worry, though, that you can prove anything with data?
Well, there's 1,000 things you can prove with data. We've got much more much more information out of it than we can possibly use. But the decision-making process then is about sorting out which things matter. And in this budget, there's going to be 10 or a dozen social investment initiatives, and I announced 3 of them the other day.
Okay, so does there need to be greater oversight when people's data is being used in this way, do you think?
Well, yes, I think there does need to be a high degree of confidence that data that is, particularly any data that is identified, is being used appropriately, that it's got thorough oversight. The ideal there is that the person whom the data is about is able to control who has access to it and how it can be used. Now, governments have never really done that. It's a big change to move to the personal control, but that's the direction we're going.
Is that something that should sit with the government? Should it not sit with someone independent?
Quite possibly, and there's ideas around now.
A commissioner, or what kind of thing are you thinking about there?
Well, the term that's bandied around at the moment is what's called a data commons. So that is something that is independent of government, but is designed to have high trust, but does include as part of it the person whose data it is being able to control access to it.
Is that something you'd want to put in place after the election if you're still the Prime Minister?
Well, yes, we're pretty interested in the idea, testing the feasibility of it at the moment.
Okay. Let's also talk a little bit about past the budget towards the election. Winston Peters putting some bottom lines out there, including the re-entry to the Pike River mine. Is that one that you feel that you can work with, considering the government stance here?
Look, we're not negotiating some kind of technical issue like that.
No, but people want to get a sense of where you are and what you think of that. So what do you think of that, bottom line?
Well, putting aside the assertion of Mr. Peters that it's a bottom line or whatever, we've maintained for some time that the decision to go in the mine is not a political one. It has to be made according to our current law by someone responsible for the workplace and the people. And changing the law on that, as is being proposed, doesn't make the mine any less dangerous. If it's dangerous regardless of what politicians say about it.
So your sense at this stage is that entry to Pike River mine, manned entry to Pike River mine, is not one that you believe should be pursued?
Well, we've already told the families that in the meeting with them in January, that if the advice to us is that from people who would have to take responsibility, that manned entry is too dangerous, then we are not going to compel someone to go in there. What we are doing is working with the families who understandably still want lots of answers to questions about what happened to their loved ones, which we're going to do through unmanned entry, and over the coming months that'll get started.
Do you think it's responsible of Mr. Peters to be speaking about Pike River mine in this way?
I think it's irresponsible to mislead the families that there is a political solution to what is a really difficult, dangerous workplace where more people could lose their lives. And in fact, in the aftermath of Pike River, more people almost did lose their lives precisely from considering and trying to get started on rescue operations.
But you may need New Zealand First, you may need Winston Peters come September the 24th. So how are you going to square this circle? Are you going to require Winston Peters, for example, to be a director of the company so that he would be responsible should anything go wrong?
Well, look, there can be any amount of speculation about, the trying to square the circle with politics and a very dangerous workplace. We're not going to get distracted by that, frankly. We've got business we're doing with the families as we speak. And we think it's important that if their issues are serious and their grief is serious, and we want to take it seriously by pursuing this unmanned entry to answer some of their questions.
So are you still totally ruling out the prospect of going in a manned operation to the mine?
Well, if Parliament decided to change the law in some way, well, I guess that's Parliament's business. But the law's pretty clear right now, and about that it has to be a responsible person who's responsible for the workplace and for the people who go in there, and that's who has to make the decision.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. That is Bill English, the Prime Minister, in the Wellington studio at 27 minutes to 8.